Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another exciting episode of Pete's Gears. In this video, I'm going to give a quick rundown of body to pan hardware and the correct procedure for bolting your body down to the chassis. All right, so we're just taking a bunch of bolts and tightening them up. Sounds simple, right? Well, not so fast. Maybe on a new car, it's easy, but on a restoration or repair of an old vehicle, it's not as simple as you think, and there's a lot of different factors that come into play. The captive nuts inside the body, they could be loaded with paint or primer, they could have blaster media, or they could have some surface rust on them, or a combination of all of the above. And so you won't be able to get the bolt in, so you're gonna have to run a tap to get it in there. The rubber gasket is in the way, so if you haven't punched a hole through the gasket first, you're gonna have to do that. The other thing is that if you've replaced your floor pans, if you've replaced your heater channels, chances are things won't line up because the aftermarket stuff is always at least a few millimeters off from original. Sometimes it could be like an inch off, you never know. So you're gonna find that when you lower your body down, nothing really lines up, and you're gonna have to oval out the holes in the floor pan so you can find the captive nuts inside the heater channel. Okay, so right here is my collection of pan hardware. I pulled this off a 64 karmannghia, and I kept it because you know, you can get replacement hardware. You can buy it new in a kit. I found that it doesn't fit very well. It just doesn't thread in very easily. It's not really worth buying the new stuff. I just took these and I had them cleaned up and zinc plated. These are gonna work great. I know they're gonna fit. These go along the perimeter of the floor pan with these washers, and they screw into the heater channels. These 4 bolts right here, they go in the top. They bolt into the Napoleon hat through the top of the heater channels. These 2 bolts right here, these go in the hidden corners under the back seat. These bolts and plates are for the front of the car to bolt the body to the beam up front. These also go into the back seat, and these bolts and plates go in behind the shock towers. So if you can find a good set that's original, I would definitely go with that. If yours are no good, if they're rusted beyond belief, go to a swap meet or go online. You can monkey around with the new stuff, but I'm telling you, it's not gonna fit well and it's not even worth your hassle. Okay, so according to the shop manual, you're supposed to tighten the M10 bolts first and then the M8 bolts second. They have to be installed in a specific order, a specific bolt on one side and then the same bolt on the other side of the car, left and right, and then go and do the next bolts in the sequence. So I'm starting with these 2 M10 bolts, 30 millimeters long, along with 2 wave washers. All right, so when the car is all put together, there's a hardboard panel that goes in right here. And right there is where the bolt goes on the passenger side, and then there's the same bolt on the driver's side right there in the corner, right in the center of the frame. All right, one thing I like to do with all my hardware is to put anti-seize on there. Put that in. One thing you should always count on with a Volkswagen is a simple job being 10 times more aggravating than it should be. The bolt is spinning, but it's not going in. All right, so I'm having a little problem here. That is because this pan was powder coated and I neglected to run a tap. Had I run a tap or chased the threads on the pan ahead of time, I wouldn't be having this problem. It's definitely easier to do before you put the body back on the chassis. And speaking of the body, don't forget to also clean out the captive nuts on the heater channels. Okay, I got the tap going. The threads right now, and hopefully this will solve my problem. Seems like it should be enough. I'm gonna back this out. Okay, take 2. See that go in now. And with the threads in the pan cleared, these 2 bolts go in with no problem at all. I torqued them down to 14 foot-pounds, and I'm ready to move on. All right, next I'm gonna grab these 4 bolts that go into the Napoleon hat up front at the top of the heater channels. Okay, so right here underneath the dash and by the A-pillar, we look under the car. This is where the heater channel wraps around to the very front of the pan, and there's 2 holes right there under the Napoleon hat, and same thing on the opposite side down there on the driver's side. There we go. So there's a rubber gasket between the hole in the captive nut on the inside. So I'm just going to pierce that really quick with this screwdriver. Again, another oversight. This is a warts and all video, folks. I was in a rush, so I failed to leave holes in the gasket before the body went down. So now I have to pierce with a screwdriver and force the bolts past the pan gasket. Now these bolts under the Napoleon hat are probably the biggest pain in the neck to get on. You might have some blaster media stuck in there, you might have paint, you might have embedded rust. You should take a punch or a pin and wedge it in there and see if you can line up there's a captive nut and bracket inside the body, and so the bolt has to fit through the pan and into that. So you might have to wiggle things around, and you might also have to run a tap through there to clear it out. Okay, torque this down. All right, the next two bolts are M10, 25 millimeters long, along with two wave washers and plates that mount the body to the beam. Okay, first the rubber bushing, then the metal plate, then the washer, and the bolt. All right, there it is. Okay, next these two M10 bolts, 30 millimeters long, with the plates and washers, and these go behind the back tire. Okay, so out here in the back above the shock tower, there's a mounting that's welded onto the body, and that bolts right here through this grommet. This grommet on a karmannghia as opposed to a beetle is kind of critical because the thickness of this grommet will determine the door gap. It actually will push the body, it'll wedge the body up and angle it upwards a little bit, and you can open and shut the door gap at the top of the door. So we'll see what happens when they bolt the doors on. I might have to either put a wedge in there to push the body up a little bit, or take this out and slip in something a little narrower. All right, so here we go. I got this metal plate, a washer, and my bolt. You can see that rubber compressing down as the bolt is torqued to 14 foot-pounds. All right, just need to do the same on the opposite side. The next bolts are 4 pointed M8 bolts and wave washers under the rear seat. I already put these bolts in the corner, but there are 4 more bolts that go through the top of the pan, through the gasket. And because I'm going to put my battery in the back seat, I'm going to bolt through this ground strap so I can get a good ground for my battery. From the factory, these bolts are pointy for a reason, and that's so they'll pierce the gasket and go right into the captive nuts. So it just requires a little bit of force to push that through here. And you can also use this. I don't know where I found this, at like a tag sale or something. I have a whole set of these punches. So I'm going to take this tool, this punch, and I'm just going to spin it around, push down on it, put out a little circle. Okay, pop that out. Okay, got all 4 bolts in. I had to tap a couple of them with an M8 tap to get the thread started. And right here I've got my battery ground strap that's grounded right into the chassis. All right, last but not least, we have all of these pan washers along with these M8 bolts that go through here like that, and they go through the perimeter of the floor pan and screw into the heater channel. I start at the front of the car, put a few bolts in, and alternate right and left, working my way towards the rear. All right, some of these bolts go in easier than others. And then over here on this side, the floor pan was sagging down a little bit, probably from me sitting on it, walking on it. So I had to push it up with the floor jack to meet the heater channel. Only on a couple of them did I have to use a tap to clear out the threads inside on the captive nuts so that I could get the bolt in. And again, these bolts have a pointed tip so they can pierce the rubber gasket, which is right here. You can also use a punch tool just to poke pull through that real quick. So I just have to put this last one in, and then I'm gonna go around and torque everything down. All right, so there it is. That's how it's done. The same techniques also apply to Type 1 beetles. The shape of a karmannghia floor pan is a little different, but it has the same exact hardware and the same techniques are used to bolt the body down to the pan. But it's not a job that'll take 20 minutes. It might take a couple hours to do it right. If you get frustrated, if you get annoyed, you should definitely just take a break. Go hang out with your family and your friends and come back fresh the next day, because you don't want to end up with some stripped out nuts inside the body, or you don't want to break off a bolt, because both of those things would be really bad and really difficult to fix. All right, I've done all the damage I can. I've shared all my knowledge and wisdom with you, which is admittedly not much. If you have any other questions, try reading your shop manual. That's it. The video's over. Bye-bye. Become a subscriber so you don't miss out on a single video from Pete's Gears, your #1 source for karmannghia DIY and restoration on YouTube, according to me.